and welcome to another great edition of
A Good Show. Thank you for joining us, and we trust that you'll be encouraged and going forth and just doing good.
Sis, on our first show, we ended by saying that we would discuss further what it meant to love yourself. We were on the topic of what is good, what does it look like, what does it mean to be good? And you'd given some powerful examples of what good really means. And we closed that show off by promising everyone that we would come back to the topic of what is good, particularly to discuss loving oneself. You had laid it out that in order to be good, good had to come from your heart.
Had to be something genuine.
It has to be something genuine.
As we move forward and we made that promise we'd come back. I think one of the things to be good to yourself is accepting yourself, accepting the fact that you are who you are, and be respectful to yourself. Honor how you were created, and do not be afraid to face your insecurities, because if we're going to be good to ourselves, the first thing we have to do is learn how to face those insecurities that might have been whispering in our ears all these years that, oh, you're not good enough. You're not good enough. That one looks better. That one is slimmer. That one is taller. That one is more educated. And then the media has not helped us. But here is the key. The Word of God tells us that we are all fearfully and wonderfully made. We all don't look alike. We all don't walk alike. We all don't talk alike. No, why? Because we're individuals. And goodness, and you can't be good to other people until you're good to yourself. Sadly, it took me many years to learn that. And I was always concerned with, do I sound right? Do I look right? I look in the mirror and, as Caymanians, we say stupid things to ourselves. Oh, you're so stupid, or we say something, and no, we got to learn how to accept who we are. Goodness comes and flows then from that, because then we can see other people as we see ourselves.
Right. Now, you said as Caymanians, this is what we have a tendency to say to ourselves, but I don't think it's limited to Caymanians alone. I think that negative thinking is something that has the potential to exist in every individual, every human being, regardless of where they are in the world. And you were also speaking about social media influence. And today we have, one of the most popular shows is Keeping Up with the Kardashians. and now we have
so many surgeries.
So many surgeries, exactly. We have young women in Cayman who are, fighting to look like Kim Kardashian, not understanding that is the result of so many surgeries. That's not all natural, right? And if we as women and as individuals, because men also have influences in their lives as well. Sure. And I really sorry to have to say so, but women have done a tremendous job beating men down, beating their masculinity down,
that is true.
Derailing their purpose by telling them that they are no good. You're not going to be no good. You're going to be like your pa. You're going to jail. You're going to be like your grandfather, and on and on. And we've done a tremendously horrible job.
Yes.
Of detouring our men achieving their purpose and their destiny. And maybe that's a topic that we should have at another time and invite on young men who are trying to achieve their purposes and have them speak about some of the adversities that they have endured. But getting back to the topic of how we think about ourselves and the influences that we are under, parents have to be especially careful with what their children are being exposed to.
And what they're saying to them also.
And yes.
And how are they communicating with their children?
Yes, because children we've heard this so many times, children are like sponges. They soak up everything that they hear. And if our young women are going to be great, it starts from the time of them being in the mother's womb and growing up, being told that they're going to be great instead of, derogatory terms, shouting and screaming at them in the supermarket and, saying, I don't know what I can do with you, and making the child feel as though that the child is beyond hope,
Yeah,
and
you grow with that. Many children grow that way, and that's what brings them into that place then of feeling that they're not good enough, and they're always trying to do things to appease someone. And as we grow into womanhood, especially women now, as we grow into womanhood, we're dressing. When we dress, we're usually dressing to attract the guys. We're not dressing for ourselves. We're dressing because we want somebody to look at us and say that we look good. But we got to get away from that, and we got to begin to understand that, truly, we have got to come to the place where we learn to love ourselves, not in a selfish way, but in a humble way, that we appreciate who we are. Okay, so my nose might be a little big. That doesn't make me ugly.
right.
So goodness has to come from acceptance, is exactly where we started off, and we can't put on a pretense on the outward and expect that it's all going to be okay on the inward. The inward has to be good first. Matter of fact, First Peter, and Peter, he warned us as women. He said, women, do not let it be the outward appearance that your husband's attracted to, such as the makeup and the earrings and the hair and the clothing. But let it be that quiet and meek and inward spirit. But he's not saying we can't wear these things.
He's not saying
No.
saying to throw yourself down and
And
just
start
kind
to
of
look like, oh, hi.
right.
Learn to accept who you are, love yourself, and all the goodness that God has put into you will begin to radiate and bless other women. Encourage other women when you go out there and you see a woman and she's wearing something nice. Just say, oh, you look so nice today. Encourage. People need to be lifted up. Goodness has to come from a place of complete acceptance of oneself. Until you accept yourself, until you just believe that you're able to do, everything that God has put you in this earth to do, and go forth with that with a humble spirit, with looking at other people and encouraging other people, that's goodness.
Yes. Now, you said just now about, seeing other women out and being able to compliment them. And I think the ability to compliment the magnificence of women as a woman comes from the confidence of oneself.
Exactly.
That you are confident in yourself, that in celebrating that individual, that woman, doesn't diminish your value as a woman. As a matter of fact, what you're doing is you're applauding the very magnificence of being a woman. And I know that a lot of times, I'll say to other women who are in my company, oh, that woman looks so good. And they'll look at me kind of like quizzically. And I said, don't they? Doesn't she? Don't they look good?
Well, sometimes you almost embarrasses me with telling me how good I look, so I know that's who you are, and encouraging. But that's what we need to do.
That's exactly what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be building up and edifying one another. Right?
Yes.
Now, on the other hand of that is when you have situations where women don't look so good, and you positively intervene by taking a gentle approach, recognizing and making your own inquiries behind the scene and saying, I just met such and such a person. Can you share what you might know about them? I want to help, but I'm not 100% sure exactly what their living situation may be, because sometimes you don't want to go directly to the individual because you don't want to bring affront to them
or embarrass them in some way.
And so you make the inquiries that are necessary, and the next conversation you know how to deal with and how to offer your help, and that's to offer your help without condemnation or criticism of that woman. And a lot of women look at yourself, they look at me. They do their comparisons. They wish they were you, or they wish they were me. Truth of the matter is that everybody have their own struggles, their own challenges. They have their own battles that they're fighting, and so you know, I think it's best that we turn our focus inward and say, okay, so this is who I am. That is who I would like to emulate positively. Not as an idol, but positively. How do I get there? Let me have a conversation with this individual, because having conversations with women who you aspire to helps you to understand life is not 100% hunky-dory for them. They're caught in a lot of battles.
Everybody is having their struggles.
And so there's no reason to be
this
envious
is why,
of them.
exactly, this is why we should not look at someone and be envious of them, because we don't know their story. Everybody has a story. And we need to just embrace who we are, you know, and it's not about where we've been. And that's another thing that we as women, we'll look at other women, because especially within our small society, I know you corrected me there about it's not just here Cayman and you're 100%, and thank you for that.
But you're good to keep it in the local sphere. Because we have enough challenges right here in this country.
Right here in this country. So with that,
we'll take our commercial break.
Yes. So let's just wrap this goodness up to the best of our ability. I'm sure it can be exhausted for the next 2 hours. But what I want to leave with people out there about what does it mean to be good? It means to accept who you are, where needs to be improved. You do that, you know. Go ahead.
Sorry, before we wrap up the topic of being good, because I think we're going to move on to care of the elderly and the disabled after this as our second topic. But before you wrap it up, how does particularly a woman, and I'm not for a moment rejecting or turning my eye away from the fact that men have also endured sexual abuse and childhood trauma. But since we are women, how does I can speak personally for myself. I'm not sure that this applies to everybody else. But how is it that a woman continues to love herself past and beyond all of that would be a question that I imagine that women watching this show would ask. Because we know that sexual abuse in this country is a prevalent, it's one of the deepest, most prevalent
dark swept
sins and crimes,
the rug from the beginning of time.
Yes, and I can speak to from my own perspective that it took a lot of me going back in memory and saying, look, I didn't ask for this. I was not at fault. When my abuser used my love for my brother so that he could continue to perpetrate his evil against me, that wasn't my fault. And through the love of Christ, I was able to then accept that me in my childhood was innocent. I was not a party to those proceedings. I was not a willing
participant.
Right. And the truth of it is, as a child, I was being raped, and that's people try to minimize the impact of that, but that's actually what is happening. And you know, I had to keep going back and recognizing that I was wonderfully made. It was my abuser's wrongdoing against me, and I always hope it was only me. That is my prayer, that it was only me.
I doubt that, because an abuser don't stop with one person, especially children. And again, as you rightly stated, there's male and female, but I also, growing up, had been sexually abused, you know, and I had to go through that, because that leaves you feeling as if you're unworthy. You just feel so, for lack of better words, you just feel so nasty.
Yes.
And you don't know who to tell, because nobody seems to want to believe that these things are happening. And that's why that is one of the areas I'm very passionate about, is when I see young ladies and I see young girls, I can look right into the eyes and I see the darkness, and I understand, and I know that they're going through something. And it takes a long time. That stigma just don't wear off, because this is going to take a different show for another time with a lot of time.
Yes.
But how do we get past that? I wish I had the one answer to say how you get past that. But there's no one answer. It's a process. And again, you need a lot of love. You need a lot of support in order to get past that. And sometimes you don't get that love and that support where you need to get it from. You're like us. You grow up and you have to come to that place through the Lord Jesus Christ, where you recognize and you read the word and says, but I was fearfully and wonderfully made. And then you begin to cut away those layers and begin to forgive those individuals and accept the fact that you had nothing to do with that. You had absolutely nothing. You didn't invite it in. It just came in, you know. So I know that that's a very, very deep thing for many, many women out there today. And that's why as women, we need to stop running our mouth about one another and learn to show each other love and learn to respect one another. Because if I am not respecting you, it's just a sign that I'm not respecting me.
Because we are women.
Because we are women. Okay, with all sorts of different backgrounds, and sexual molestation doesn't just happen to the poor child down in Rock Hole or Dog City like myself. It happens in high society, in high places, and it carries the same damage. You feel as if you have no hope. You're ashamed of it. That's why I said earlier, you have to face your fears. You have to face all those things that happen to you and deal with them. Get some help, you know, and sometimes it's hard to find the help because it's hard to trust people.
And I think it's hard to trust people because from the childhood was broken from
exactly.
And then because you know that all the things that was said to you and how it was going to be your fault, and then how do I now as an adult get someone to understand or to even believe that it wasn't my fault, that I didn't break me, you know? And so in getting help, you know, it's about getting the right type of help also. And I was self-medicating for decades.
Trying to numb that pain and get away from the shame. But when we do, and the blame game, yes. You ever saw that movie? It was called Precious, made many years ago. It was based on a true story. And this young lady, where her father was sexually molesting her. Her mother was aware, but he would do it right in the room with her mother present. And the child came up to where she ended up pregnant. Anyway, this child, through the help of some social workers, this is based on a true story, was able to finally rise above it, you know. But again, that takes a lot of support. It takes a lot of love and the goodness of other women's heart to reach out, because we have a tendency want to say people brought this on themselves, they did this, oh, she did this, she did that. I remember some weeks ago I heard about some young lady that I can't remember the story, but apparently it was that she was such a horrible person. She was a 14-year-old that had run away, and she was just being maligned and tore apart. And I'm like, do you know her story? Do you know why? Why is she running from? A lot of the fights that we see in school, we need to find out what is going on.
What is the latent cause of that?
What is the undercurrent of all of these things?
Exactly.
I mean, some people are just going to be bad, okay? Because they choose to, and they're not necessarily being molested. I don't want to now make this sound as if
that every bad behavior is a result of being sexually molested.
No, it's not, you know. But oh my goodness, this topic cannot be exhausted this evening.
Well, I would allow us to close it out by saying this, that self-love have to be most evident in the bad situations. Being able to recover and overcome what happened is probably the strongest testament of love for oneself. It may take you a long time. It may not be an easy journey.
It won't be an easy journey, I can tell you that. It's
you
not an
can't
easy
give up
journey.
on yourself.
No.
You can't just throw yourself into the hole and say, well, nobody ever loved me, so I'm just going to destroy the rest of my life, because the truth of that is that it's you that's destroying the rest of your life, because you do have a choice, and that is to seek help and to get to love yourself and to understand that a lot of things that happen to you is not your fault,
It's
regardless
not
of
who you
what
are.
anybody said. And and it's not who you are. You are wonderfully and fearfully made. You are magnificent. You are perfect in God's eyes.
Yes,
you
you
are
are.
innocent. You are a woman, or you are a young man, or you are a man, because a lot of men are now elderly but have already lived through that abuse, because evil existed from the beginning of time until now. But the truth of it is that you're just absolutely amazing. You're awesome. And regardless of how many lies you have been told in the past, we're here to tell you today, you are wonderful. You are wonderful.
It's a journey. It won't happen all at one time, but you can take it layer by layer. You know, get the help. Find someone you can trust.
If you need,
yes, go ahead.
And if you need help, Pastor Ellen and I are here to help you.
Yes.
To source the help that you need for your journey, so that you can recover and so that you can overcome. And so you can get to love yourself, because you were made for greatness. And what happened to you doesn't mean that you are not great.
No.
And it's not too late. That you got a little job, and you're not too late.
And it's not too late.
It means you got a little job that you need to get done, but you have the strength, because everything that was needed for you to be able to overcome this was placed in you when you were created in your mother's womb, when you were wonderfully and fearfully made.
Yes.
And with that,
and it doesn't matter how old you are. Okay, some people is not able to deal with this until, like myself, going close to 70, and it's only in the last few years I've been able to deal with some of these things and even talk about them. And if I was to talk about them in depth right now, like I said, it'll take a good 2-hour show or 3 shows doing an hour each or something, you know. But I just want to encourage us as women to be good, to be kind to ourselves, and to be kind to one another. We don't have to put anyone down to build ourselves up. You know, watch what comes out of our mouth. It's not easy. Sometimes some things come out of my mouth that I have to quickly rope it back in. You know, it might be a curse word, but it's a negative word. So I want to encourage us this evening to
be mindful.
Be mindful, you know, and fear, and not be mindful of fear, sorry. Embrace who you are.
Thank you for staying tuned to a good show with Pastor Ellen Peguero and myself, Katina Anglin. Pastor, we just concluded discussion for now on being good and being good to oneself. And we promised that we would continue the discussion on care of the elderly and the disabled in the Cayman Islands. That was a topic that we had engaged in last week. And now we're going to expand on it some more, because we have so many elderly and disabled people in this country. And the truth of the matter is, every year that elderly base is going to grow.
Oh, yes.
Yes. I spoke about it on one of the previous shows about the neglect of the disabled and the elderly by their own families, which is true, because there are many people in this country who are just cast aside by their family, by their families, sorry. But then there are other persons in this country who their families aren't able to take care of them, you know. And you already are a senior citizen. I am approaching senior citizenship.
I'm embracing it.
Yes, and you make it look good.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, you make it look good. So, what are some of the challenges that you see or you are aware of for families in Cayman for caring for their elderly and the disabled in their families?
This is another wide, big topic because there's so much neglect. A lot of people in this country cannot care for their families because they just don't have those resources. A number of people don't, and the Word of God is clear that children, any elderly that has children and grandchildren that can take care of them, that should be their responsibility. But what we're finding is this disparity between the haves and the have-not. So those who have can do it, but the have-nots, though they want to take care of the elderly, they just don't have the resources to do so. And because I don't think all the care should be a burden of government. However, when there is no one else there, I think that is definitely something that many of us pay our tax money to go to. I mean, we're indirectly taxed, but we are taxed.
Yes.
So, I mean, how do we, when people go to get help here from NAU, this is just my assumption or my belief, is that a lot of times the cases are looked at based on the fact that, oh, well, that person knows that they have children that they believe is able to take care of them without really investigating, and maybe the reason they're not investigating it is because they're sitting overburdened with all of the paperwork that they can't get to process, So our elderly in this country and the disabled need some serious attention.
You mentioned just now about assumptions being drawn on family members and not having a full scope of what family members are actually enduring. And I think that is one of the, for the want of a better word, plagues of our society, and that we live in a very judgmental society.
Yes.
And so people have a tendency to look at family members and say, oh, well, this person could do so much better for their parents, and this one could do so much better for their parents. But while they see the person generating this income, they have no knowledge of just how far in debt that individual may be,
exactly.
What other medical needs that individual may be experiencing, and so on. But I think that the eye should never be turned away from the fact that government has set up a needs assessment unit to aid and assist the elderly, the disabled, and the needy in society, and that being persons who are able-bodied, but they need assistance in this instance, in this situation, for this time. No man is an island. Life is not always perfect. There are times when you need to ask for help, and that's why NAU was created. It was created to give relief to poor persons. That's actually the first law that was created, was the Poor Persons Relief Law. Now, in that, there's an obligation on the government to ensure that NAU is properly staffed. And when I say properly staffed, I mean adequate in number and adequate in qualifications to be able to manage the demands of society. And I say to manage the demands of society because when I take a look at and I ask questions surrounding NAU and how many people they have employed and what's their dependency level, it is lacking resources. It's lacking the first and most critical resource, and that is to be adequately staffed. There are thousands of people who are on NAU, right? But just a handful of workers, and how are they supposed to realistically process all of that? And then they have this recurrent 3-month cycle, and they need to really look at
their own issues.
Yes. Now we know that, yes, and we know that the government is looking at changes to that law and to that department's operations, which is a good thing. And that's the government looking at the government's responsibilities. But let us turn our eye back to our own individual responsibilities as members of our family, members of our community, and members in our church. Because I think one of the entities that's most misguided in this country is the church and the way that it deals with its community's needs. I know personally of churches giving away funds to meet a need that was not a urgent need, simply because the need had been requested from some time ago, but it was not going to cause that family to fall apart. Yeah, you may have had to catch the bus for a bit longer. Yes, you may have had to carpool for a bit longer, but it wasn't going to stop you from getting food on your table. And so the preference then became to give to, simply because this request had been made and was the next one in line, the need of the person who was truly in need, the family who was truly in need, got pushed back because their application wasn't next in line. And,
are you talking about the church doing that, or
I'm
you?
No, the church. I'm talking about a particular church that didn't properly evaluate how it would disperse its charity.
Oh,
and,
okay.
And I'm
well,
not,
I get it.
yeah. And I'm not saying it to be condemning of the church. I'm saying that the citizen, the community, and the church has an obligation to care for its elderly, to care for its disabled. It's a biblical principle. And before we can really get around to crying down the government for what the government should be doing or needs to be doing or must do or hasn't done, we need to be sure that we've checked all the boxes first and made sure that the church and the community has stepped up and made sure that poor old Uncle Fred had his soup, his breakfast, and his supper for the evening. You know, because there are families in this country who cannot afford to feed their elderly and their children and themselves, to keep themselves going, to be able to bring home some food into the household.
You know, again, we
and I'm not saying that to
I understand.
to
malign the church in any way, or,
right,
or, you know,
or dispute what you were saying, but
right, because churches do have a responsibility. But then let us put it into context. Who is the church?
Us.
We are the church.
We are the church.
We are the church. And I know many churches that are out there helping, and you know, as best as they can, because again, the churches depends on the resources that comes into the church. And what we're having in many churches is that people are saying that, oh, well, you know, they're not tithing or they're not giving because of this or that. But this is one of the reasons that the churches are not able to step out as well as they should. Yes. Because people are not willing. They think that the tithes and offering is going for this or that, and it's not. You need to find credibility. I mean, I'm not saying now that sometimes there are not churches, quote unquote, that are not being misusing funds. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is another topic altogether. But the reality is, many churches who are accountable, churches who take these things serious, and I thank God I attend one that do, you know, take this serious and reach out there and help, you know, is doing what they can with what they have.
Yes.
But the first responsibility, I agree with you, is the family, the church, and then the government.
Yes. This is Katina England.
And I'm Ellen Peguero.
And we want to thank you for having stayed tuned to another good
show
again.
Yes.
And we look forward to having you on with us again next week, when we will expand on this topic even further. It's hard to fit enough good into just a half hour. We may have to look at expanding this to a 1 hour show, Pastor Ellen. But until the next time, we'll see you here on a good show. And that is on Cayman Life TV, channel 33.
Mm-hmm. On Sunday evenings and Tuesdays at 7 p.m. And on Big Fish at 12 noon on Saturdays and Wednesdays. We look forward to seeing you, or you seeing us again and joining us for a good show.
God bless you.